5 years since the last one, Vapor Trails. During the period that followed, Geddy, Alex, and Neil toured the world, released a collection of covers of some of their favorite classic rock songs, and combed the archives for rare footage for various DVD collections. And there were books and motorcycle rides and games of golf and tennis and life in general. And some time to write new songs and get into the studio throughout 2006 with new co-producer Nick Raskulinecz to lay them down. For the next 90 minutes, conversation from 2 sit-down sessions, one with Geddy and Alex together, and from a one-on-one with Neil Peart to talk about the creation of the new studio album from Rush and to play lots of music from it. So here we go. Work on the album took place all over the place, including hometown Toronto and LOCR studios in the Catskill Mountains of New York State. Were there particular environments for each of you, Geddy, Alex, that were really conducive to being creative and making a great record?
My favorite time, I think probably Ged would agree, was when we first started at his place, and we got together for 5 or 6 hours a day, 3 days a week to work, and it was so exciting to get back into it. We were taking a different approach. I was writing on acoustic. We kept it very simple and very casual and really organic, and I think that was probably my favorite time, although there is not anything that's less than that, really. Every portion of it was so much fun in its own way.
This one was one of those albums that was a pleasure to make. They don't happen very often. But from the beginning, the way Alex described, working in a casual way, just the two of us, no crew members, nobody, just the two of us. And we haven't done that in a really, really long time. It just took all this extraneous noise out of the picture, so we could really focus and just hang out, and if we needed to plug something in, he was on his hands and knees plugging it in, and I was watching him do that. And when we moved to LOCR, I was very skeptical because I've become quite a curmudgeon about recording in Toronto. I like to be home, I like to have dinner with my family, I like to see my daughter, and so Neil, rightfully so, wanted to record his drums in the best possible environment, and he'd been at LOCR Studios in upstate New York and knew what a magnificent drum room they had. So we said, okay, let's go, but as soon as we're done the drums, we're coming home. But something happened along the way. We got there, and the place is magnificent, and we were doing such good work so quickly, and Nick, our producer, was thrilled to be in a residential place. I mean, he's a guy who works in LA all the time, so it's crazy time for him all the time. And here we are in a peaceful, serene environment, very beautiful, and all these different options in terms of recording, because the studio is basically a compound that was built in the 20s by a wealthy Pittsburgh family that basically bought the whole mountain, 40,000 acres, and built this compound on the top. And it's full of these great rooms, cathedral ceilinged rooms, and a couple of studio recording environments. So Nick said to us, look guys, if we stay here, we can probably get all the recording done in 5 weeks. And everybody said, yeah, except me, of course. I was grumbling under my breath, I want to go home. But I thought about it, and yeah, you're right. We'll get a lot done here, no distractions, and it actually turned out to be a hell of a lot of fun.
Geddy, the first taste of Snakes and Arrows came with the song Far Cry, first single and cut number 1 on the album too. How did that one come about?
Well, Far Cry was one of those songs that just happened in the studio. When we had just taken 2 months off in the summer, we already had about 8 songs that we had written, and it was our first jam after our summer break. And Alex and I got in the studio and we just started jamming, and we had this jam that was just golden. We were just having so much fun, and we kept going in from part to part, and a huge amount of music we ended up with. Afterwards, I sat down and started sorting through the different bits that we jammed to, because we record all our jams. I should preface that by saying that. And so Al went into the back of the room, as he likes to do, and get into his spiritual moment, which usually is followed by snoring. And I was playing with these bits of music, and I got really excited about it because there was so much good music. Anyway, we left it for the night, went home, came back the next day a little early because I was still thinking about this. So I got in a bit early before Al came in for his nap, and I started working on it, and I noticed that Neil had left some lyrics on the counter, a new song that he'd written. So I read these lyrics, and I just loved them right from the get-go, and they were just great. And I looked at this chorus, and it just kind of came out at me from the page highlighted. And I pulled out this part of the jam that we'd done yesterday, and I started singing to it. And within seconds, I had this chorus. It's virtually exactly as it is on the song now. And I pulled Neil and I said, do you think this is a good direction for this song? And he said, wow, it sounds great. And by the end of the day, the song existed. And it was just one of those magical things that just, the song kind of made itself, which is rare, very rare, and always welcome by me.
There's Far Cry on the world album premiere of the new Rush record, Snakes and Arrows, with special guests Geddy Lee, Alex Lifeson, and Neil Peart. Neil, a year of work went into making the record, so how does it feel now when you finally get to say, here it is?
Yeah, that's a good question every time, really. And whether we've made a new album or when I have a book coming out, it's been private and mine for so long. And the time that people first start to hear new music, of course, it's a bit of trepidation, I guess is the word. Sending your baby out there. And we've been working on it for just over a year ourselves as our little private thing, and tinkering away with the songs and with our performances and working together at the studio down in LOCR in the Catskill Mountains of New York, and then the mixing in Los Angeles, and all an enclosed thing. So few people have heard it, and even among our friends, really. So it's exposed to the world for the first time. There is certainly that apprehensiveness, might be another word too. You hope people will like it, because the nature of our music is so organic in that when we write a song, we really are wanting to love it. I described in the essay that I wrote that when I first hear a demo that Geddy and Alex have worked on, when we started out, I sent some lyrics up from California, and the two of them just got together in Geddy's home studio and started playing. And Geddy started singing whatever seemed to suit, the music. So when I first heard a couple of months later those first demos, I was listening, first of all, as the lyricist to hear if those words worked, and so delighted when they did, and inspired by Geddy's suggestions for how we could, make them better, or what would work better for him singing, etc. And I'm also listening as the drummer who has to learn that song and maybe play it, thousands of times. So those levels are going on. But more importantly, I'm listening as a fan. I want to love that song, and that was what's so gratifying right off the top when I first heard Bravest Face and when I first heard The Way the Wind Blows, and that I loved them right away.
The Way the Wind Blows, Rush, from the new album Snakes and Arrows. It's a record that actually features 3 instrumentals, which is a first for a Rush record. Among them, a tremendous Alex Lifeson guitar piece called Hope. Tell us a bit about it, Alex.
It was kind of funny. Actually, Geddy was the instigator for the whole thing, the catalyst, when he was, when I was back on the couch, busy working on other things. I would either take a little nap and relax a little bit, or else I'd be sitting quietly strumming my guitar. Maybe not so quietly, but strumming my guitar in the back. And from time to time, Ged would turn around and say, don't forget that. Don't forget that thing that you just did. Don't forget that. And he said, Al, you got to do something acoustic on the record. You haven't done it in a long time. It'd be nice to have this breath of fresh air. And I thought, yeah, I'd love to do that. I haven't done it in a long time, but I'm not going to think about it. Just leave it to the end and make it very spontaneous. And we'd finished all the recording. We struck the room. It was, all the gear was packed away, and it was just my little chair and 5 mics. And Rich brought out his tape measure and had a very scientific process that he was working on about recording. And basically, I just played along for a couple of minutes while he's getting the levels, and then recorded the song. And I hadn't really composed it or anything. It was all made up of parts that I was just playing and that were in my head. And I thought I would just play and see what happens, after a few minutes. So I did it, and I'm sitting out there fully expecting to do it 5 or 6 more times and picking the best of the lot. And I looked through the window, and everybody had a thumbs up, and come on in. And I came in and said, okay, that's it. And I listened to it, and we mixed it.
You played it twice.
We mixed it, and then that was it. So that's what you're listening to, what took an hour in the studio at sort of the end of the whole thing.
Yeah, and we didn't remix it. It was just exactly that version that he played. He played it twice. The first time was awesome, and we could have used it, but we said, okay, let's let him play it one more time. You never know. And it was even better. So I think it's one of my favorite pieces on the record. It's long overdue. He's such a great guitarist. He's such a great acoustic guitarist, and a lot of people don't realize that. And when you hear that, it sounds like there's 3 guitar players playing, and there's overdubs, but there's no overdubs. It's just one Serbian sitting there playing an acoustic 12-string.
It's 2 minutes of magic. It's fantastic.
Well, thank you very much.
That's Hope, featuring the guitar work of Alex Lifeson of Rush. Coming up, more music and FaceTime with all 3 members of the band. In fact, Neil Peart will reveal the main theme behind the new album, Snakes and Arrows, next.
Rush, Snakes and Arrows. The world album premiere is in association with HMV. HMV, get into it.
The title of the new studio album from Rush, Snakes and Arrows, comes from the second song on the record, Armor and Sword, featuring lyrics by who else but Rush drummer Neil Peart. Neil, take us behind the scenes on this one.
Armor and Sword came again out of the metaphor developed for my book Roadshow, and just reflected on the idea of militant spirituality, because that ought to be an oxymoron, it seems to me. Spirituality ought to be a place of peace and reflection. And, it seems naive to be saying these things, but it seems so clear when I do, that when I think of the word spirituality, I think of something peaceful and inward and meditative and consoling. And that's what I started to think of when I was trying to define faith for myself. And here's the good kind and the bad kind. The good kind is that comforting, consoling, answers those mysterious questions, gives you comfort when you're suffering. All that is a kind of armor. So having seized on that, then I thought, okay, what's the bad kind that you see in evangelical Christianity and fundamentalist Muslim Islam is a sword coming at you, infidel, or the number of people of any faith who believe that you should share their faith, whether that's jihad or a knock on your door saying, I want to give you the gift of my faith. That's the sword, in a way. So that was the basis of it. And then I started thinking of the militancy of the sword part of it and the battlefield imagery and so on that developed into it. But it is probably one of the keynote thematic songs of the album.
Armor and Sword, Rush on the world album premiere of Snakes and Arrows. Since spirituality is a key theme throughout the whole new album, it begs a question that actually comes from a Rush fan and a radio listener and a visitor to my blog at legendsofclassicrock.ca. And the question is this: do you believe in God? Alex, Getty?
Do we believe in God?
Yeah.
Well, I believe that if there is a God, that he should be fired. I kind of subscribe to the Woody Allen theory of religion, that God is an underachiever and needs to be reprimanded.
Yeah, I can't say that I do believe in God, or at least in the Judeo-Christian idea of God. And I find that I drift farther and farther away from even embracing that idea.
My good friend George, George Stroumboulopoulos, was interviewing famous Canadian woman, June Callwood, who just died recently, and it was weeks before her death. And he asked her the same question. And I loved her answer. She said, I believe in kindness.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That doesn't mean we're devoid of spirituality. I think spirituality and God are two different concepts.
There's Faithless, new from Rush, the album Snakes and Arrows. I'm Jeff Woods with Getty, Alex, and Neil. Throughout the journey of making this new Rush album, Neil, was there a particular bit of learning you did about yourself?
It is a kind of process of discovery, because and I found this in prose writing too. If you're going to say something, you have to figure out what you want to say. And there's some funny writers. How do I know what I think until I hear what I say? So in working on the lyrics and themes, of course, faith and spirituality and religion are a big part of the theme. So I had to think about that. What do I really think? And the writing of Roadshow was a large part of that research in a way. And the whole armor and sword metaphor came out of that book, because I had to think about what I was seeing as I traveled around in my motorcycle around, the central United States and the South and that, and seeing the church signs every day that were becoming oppressively overwhelming. And so I was thinking about what's good about faith and what's good about spirituality and what's bad about it became a part of the thinking.
Coming up, more of this thinking person's rock, including another of the 3 new instrumental tunes from Rush that got its title from a Rush mother. Among the many highlights from the first Rush album in 5 years is the instrumental called The Main Monkey Business. Getty, I hear there's a story behind the title.
Yes, I guess. It wasn't supposed to be a public story. I don't mind sharing it with you. It's just a phrase my mother used once when she was imparting a little gossip with me about someone she knows, someone we all know, that had driven down to Florida with a friend to deliver the car of another person. Anyway, long story short is this person was up to hijinks. And my mother was telling me, well, I think there was some monkey business involved. And I said, what do you mean monkey business? What kind of monkey business? And she said, the main monkey business.
Which can only mean one thing.
I love that phrase, and every time I think of her saying the main monkey business, it makes me laugh.
Neil, are you looking forward to playing that one live?
We joked at one time that I hope we don't play this song live. That one, an instrumental might seem frivolous, and sometimes, as in Malignant Narcissism, it is. It's just an excuse to do some weird things. And we always set out to write instrumentals on every album, but a lot of times they're good parts that we say, well, we need a good verse for this song. Let's take that one out of the instrumental and put it in the song. So the instrumentals get scavenged into other songs, which fair enough, of course. If you've got a great part, it's hardly a waste, but it does mean that we get robbed of our instrumentals a lot of times. So this time we had building ideas for the main monkey business, and for myself, I wasn't convinced, and I kept saying to the guys, well, guys, I see what you're going for, but I'm not sold yet. It's not working for me as a complete piece, and I'd like more majesty and beauty in there, and all the kind of stuff that I personally like. So our music is not a democracy. It can't be 2 against 1, because then you got one unhappy person. It has to be consensus, is the word I like. Everybody has to like it, and ideally everybody has to love it. So that song was the hardest to write, the hardest to arrange, and the hardest to play of the whole thing. And I'm rehearsing right now for the upcoming tour, and that's one of the songs that I'm working on. And it's a killer to play. It took me 3 days to learn it. That's the perfect example. By the time we finished writing and arranging it, and we had it there, okay, finally, we all love it, great. And then once I started working on drum parts for it, it took me 3 days of work just to learn it. Never mind to play it well or work on the transitions and all that stuff, but just to know that song took me that much time as a drummer. So that gives you some idea of how hard it will be to play live.
Going back to writing long form after writing something as concise as lyrics to a record.
Lyrics are absolutely the hardest to write, and to write those 200 words is really 3 days usually. It'll take 3 solid days of going back at it, sometimes very frustratingly. I'm thinking it's not working, it's not making any sense, it's not coming together, it's not beautiful, all of those things. And then finally, after 3 days of perseverance, the moment will come. And there's a quote by Picasso that I love that says, yes, there's such a thing as inspiration, but it tends to find us while we're at work. In other words, you can't sit around looking at the clouds. You have to be sitting there fighting with your paint, or fighting with your words, or fighting with your drums until that inspiration comes. And there's a tabla drumming is about the most complex form of percussion there is. And I was reading an interview with a tabla player who practices every day for hours. He says, yes, but most days I just play. Once every 7 or 8 days, something magic happens. And that magic, of course, is the inspiration, but he has to go there every day, and like I do, the same thing, sit in front of that blank piece of paper or just keep fiddling with words that you think are garbage and want to throw in the fire, and maybe, if you're lucky, the magic will come together, but it's only the perseverance that does it.
Years ago, before the motorcycles, you traveled West Africa on bicycle. That experience yielding a book about it. And all these years later, Neil, a song called The Larger Bowl. Tell us about it.
Musically, I think it influenced very much by our feedback experimentations, too, of playing Buffalo Springfield songs and playing the Yardbirds songs. So there was a simplicity there, but lyrically, it was really an experiment from the front of my rhyming dictionary, where I gave a list of different types of verse forms, and there was sonnets and rondos and sestinas and all this stuff. So I just started trying them out as like solving a crossword puzzle, and I created this one form, or used this one form called a pantoum from Malay, and it had a very strange revolving construction that had certain rules about using the second and fourth lines had to become the first and third lines of the next one, and it all had to circle back to the opening line as the end. And I wrote 3 songs at the time surrounding that, but that was 1991, and I never even passed them to the other guys. They were just experiments to me. And this time, as I was going through the material I have, and I have a file called the Scrapyard, where I keep all my old bits and pieces or little ideas or phrases that I like. Well, Far Cry, the title was just that part of that list in the Scrapyard, for example. Roll the Bones sat in my Scrapyard for 10 years, those kind of things. So it is a great source of material sometimes. And I was digging around in there, and I found these old pantoums that I'd written. So I just passed them over to the guys to see what would happen. And they were inspired by that unusual construction, and approached it musically like that too. What if we did a chord structure that revolved in the same way that these words do? And so in structure is very unusual, because there's no verse, chorus, bridge, anything. It's just verse after verse, the same verse over and over again, but so dynamically differently treated that it has the appearance of chorus. And we pegged it that way as we were building it. It was quite complicated arrangement-wise because of its simplicity. But we say, okay, let's treat this as if it were the chorus, even though it's the fifth verse, you know. And Nick was very helpful in the arrangement aspect of helping us build the dynamics of where solo guitar, double guitar, bring the bass in here, drums just build slowly through one whole verse. That was a beautiful idea of just having this pumping, the bass drum just building and building, building through a whole verse up to all the almighty flam, and then whack, hop into the next verse. So that was very intriguing, of taking, first of all, a very unusual verse form for a rock song, and thus a very unusual musical form for a rock song, and yet applying all the usual tools of rock arrangement to that. So I think that's one of the most unusual ones that we've done, and yet I really love listening to it and playing it.
That's The Larger Bowl, and it's brand new from Rush. Inspiration can come when you least expect it, and from the most unlikely of places. Ever see the movie Team America World Police? Well, Neil Peart did. And it inspired some serious narcissism in the music of Rush. That story and more new music next.
Rush, the Snakes and Arrows World Album Premiere, exclusively on 97.5 K-Rock.
Hi, this is Geddy Lee.
Hello, this is Neil Peart.
And Alex Lifeson of Rush.
Welcome back to the world album premiere of
Snakes and Arrows.
Another standout track on the new Rush album is yet another instrumental. It's called Malignant Narcissism.
That was a bit of last-minute improv. The record was pretty well done. I was doing vocals, and Andy Curran, who a wonderful bass player in his own right, and we're fortunate enough to have him working with our management company now. He was up visiting us in the studio, and he was saying, "Kent, you got to check out this Jaco Pastorius tribute bass that Fender's making." So he showed it to me online, and it looked really cool. So, we called Fender and said, "Can you send one up for me to check out?" And they sent one up, and it arrived, and it's this magnificent reproduction of his bass. And I just started playing it, and it's just one of those magical basses to play. It just sounds great. It's so fun. So I was doing vocals, and, in between vocal takes, it's boring. So I'm either checking my baseball stats on my computer or sitting around.
Baseball stats.
My stats. And so I'm plunking around with this bass, and I'm just having a blast. And unbeknownst to me, Nick was recording what I was playing just through the mic, like, live, with the clackety-clack. And so after a while, he said, "Dude, that's awesome." Now, he says that every 2 minutes, so you don't really take it seriously. "Dude, that's awesome. That's a song. We got to record that." And Alex was away. He was down in Florida dealing with some stuff. So, and Neil happened to be there. He'd come back, even though his stuff was finished. He was having so much fun hanging around with the guys that he flew back from the West Coast just to hang out with us. And his main drum kit was gone. He just had a little 4-piece kit left. So we decided the next day we would try to write a song and keep it under 2 minutes or under 3 minutes if we could, Why, I don't know. We figured enough is enough. So there I am on a fretless, and I am not a fretless player, so that's my limitation. And there's Neil on a 4-piece kit, so that's his limitation. And, within a few hours we had this 2.5-minute jam, and we just loved it. And then we surprised him with it when he arrived. And I think it took him a couple days to figure it out in terms of what is this crazy thing. And then he came up with this awesome part for it himself. And so we did it very quickly, just a couple of days, literally. And it was the last song for the album.
And what about the title, Neil?
We didn't have a title. We were just sitting around after recording it, and I made the quote from Team America, where they talk about Lisa, the psychologist, she's our expert on terrorism and the way that terrorists think. It's mostly a case of malignant narcissism brought on during childhood. And I just said that, and Geddy ran over to the dry marker board where we had all the song titles listed and wrote it down. Malignant Narcissism. Perfect.
Malignant Narcissism. There's Rush from the album Snakes and Arrows. Along with the standard CD version, Snakes and Arrows is also being released as a DVD album featuring 5.1 surround sound and documentary footage. Over the last 5 years or so, you've been giving fans a lot of bang for their buck with the recent DVD releases. There's the 3-disc replay collection, also contained a CD soundtrack, as did the 30th anniversary DVD. What is it about the DVD format that works so well for Rush, Geddy?
I think it's just a medium that suits us really, really well. I mean, to me, 5.1 DVD, visually and orally, is really the best way to capture any performing artist. It really is. And we've done so many live albums that we've had to get, familiar with this technology. And for me, making live albums is difficult. You know, it's a lot of work, and that's why he does it now. And he's really good at it. And I deal with the visuals, and he deals with the sound. But I think, from a fan's point of view, it's really a wonderful experience to be put back in the concert hall. Because when you see a band, it's not just two-dimensional flat in front of you. It's you're sensing everything, the crowd around you. And so I think it's just ideal. It's an ideal medium for the kind of band we are and the kind of live projects we do.
Along with embracing the world of DVD, you've also embraced the internet. One can spend hours on Rush.com and NeilPeart.net and your own MySpace, Neil, watching, listening, reading, laughing. What has this online space afforded you that you hold as truly significant, Neil?
What I love about my own particularly is it's trustworthy. You know, one of the reasons I had to put up a MySpace page wasn't any desire, but I have a friend who overlooks all internet issues for me and all that, and he pointed out to me there are all these imposters pretending to be me on MySpace and having dialogues with people as me. And this, I think anyone would understand, it creeps me out, you know, and I worry about what people are saying in my name. And one of the messages that my internet guardian showed me was from a woman who had been conversing with someone she thought was me for weeks, and she felt duped and humiliated. Of course, again, as anyone would, you know, this is not a specific celebrity thing. This is just a creepy thing that could happen to anybody, somebody pretending to be you and talking to someone else in your name, you know. So that's one thing. But on my own Neil Peart site, I try to keep it just stuff that's about me, my books, or my friends' books, or I have Bubba's Book Club on there where I do book reviews and all that. And I try to write little stories for it from time to time about what we're doing and tell the truth, basically, so to stem all the rumors going around and try to shed some reality light. And through the period of the last year or so of making this record, I posted 2 or 3 stories that were from the inside. They were meant to be personal because that's the nature of it, whereas the essay I wrote about Snakes and Arrows goes on the band site. You know, I wouldn't put that on mine because it's band business, you know. So I draw a firm line there between what goes on one and what goes on the other. And I like just having the opportunity to present the true stories. And in the book review forum, I end up spending a lot of time on them, of course, because I'm writing a story. I want it to be written well. And again, the rules we talked before about being a writer or a drummer, here's what I want the reader to get. What does the reader have to know for me to express that feeling or that image or to take them that place? And lately I've even been using photographs from time to time in there to show different parts of life that are important and beautiful to me and moments to remember, a ski trail or a motorcycle ride or something that are part of the story, part of the creative story. And although I'm a very private person and I really dislike invasions, that doesn't mean I don't like to share, you know. And if I have a chance with privacy and dignity to share something true about the parts of life that are worth celebrating, too. To me, it's not just a blog in the sense of talking about myself. I want to share something that I think is important. And when it's a winter landscape or a motorcycle ride or something that's spiritually enriching to me and ties into talking about the work and talking about drumming and talking about drums, all of that is a personal aspect of life that I can share without risk, you know, or without unpleasant consequences. So that's an important and enjoyable and challenging thing to me more and more. I'm proud of what we've done with that.
There's good news first. It's from the album Snakes and Arrows, and it's brand new from Rush. So then, what is classic Rush? Neil Peart answers that question next.
Hello, this is Neil Peart.
And Alex Lifeson of Rush.
Welcome back to the world album premiere of
Snakes and Arrows.
Approaching 20 studio albums in the course of 30 years together, there's no doubt that whatever music Geddy Lee, Alex Lifeson, and Neil Peart create together will sound like Rush. According to the band's producer, Nick Raskolinix, the new album Snakes and Arrows sounds like classic Rush. Care to confirm, support, or deny that, Neil?
We are classic Rush, so, but I do know what he means. And the interesting thing was that Nick is 37 years old and grew up as a fan of the band. Grew up in Knoxville, Tennessee, but also became a musician in his own right. Again, played drums in a band, played bass in a band, played guitar in a band, and then started producing and worked his way west, basically from studio to studio. So he has a wealth of experience, and that's what gave us so much respect for his opinion and the quality of his ideas. So he brought all of that to us, and enthusiasm, and it was like having your most talented, intelligent, imaginative, enthusiasm, creative, you know, all of that stuff in there, but also he was a constant air drummer, constantly air drumming along with me and giving me suggestions in air drumming talk and all that. So he is there. He is a rock fan, as are we all. And I was saying before, we make music that we find exciting and that we love, and he was part of that. He wanted to love that music and be excited by it too. And he brings more of. So we tend not to bring our history with us, or if anything, we're determined not to do what we've done before. And one of my mandates, certainly coming in, was not to play rhythmic patterns I've played before, not to play fills I've played before, to find as many new ones as I can, even if they're just new to me, but even approaches from other influences or whatever. I'm determined not to repeat myself, even in the same song, if I can help it. So I guess that's an important thing too. We bring this sense of adventure and freshness and rebellion against our past, in a sense, in a good way. We like what we've done, but we think we can do better. I guess that's a nice way to put it. And where Nick comes in of being a true fan of all that we've done before and wanting to be part of something new and fresh too. So yes, he's got a little bit of a different, it's a personality agenda, not a business agenda or any kind of a codified approach that we must adhere to. But he came in with his heart and we came in with our hearts, I guess. And his heart, came out of being a fan, but wanting to be a part of something new and great that measures up to his memory of us too. How excited he was at 18 of seeing Rush play. That's how he wants to feel. So that's great. And I want to feel the same inspiration. Yes, I want to feel as good about the drumming that I'm doing as I did on Permanent Waves. To feel that I'm being adventurous and accomplishing something new and getting better. I want all that to be part of it. Nick wants that to be part of it. So that's an interesting way in a spiritual unity of the four of us, really, the three of us that Nick brought together, and to say that that's what he wanted it to be, classic Rush. Well, yes, we want it to be the new classic Rush. We want this to be, in 20 years, what people think moving pictures is now, so that's a good thing.
That's We Hold On. It's Rush from the new album Snakes and Arrows. A great new album. Another tour that's selling out arenas. Geddy, Alex, I'm guessing that somehow this period in the band's history is in many ways the most enjoyable of your career.
Well, I would say this album is probably the most enjoyable album I've ever made. And I do enjoy the tours a lot. I love walking out there and seeing those people so excited to hear us, and they smile, and then I smile, and then for some reason I can't wipe that smile off my face. So I guess it is. I guess we are having more fun than we've ever had.
We did have a lot of fun in the early days, though. It was very exciting to be, a young band, especially from Canada, playing with all these big bands that we looked up to, and that whole process of growing and that experience. But I think Ed's right. These seem to be very good times.
I think, when you're the age we are, you appreciate what you're going through in the moment more. When you're younger, you don't always realize what's happening to you. It's hard to have that perspective on your life. It's just like when you see some kid come out of nowhere and he, scores 35 goals his first season. He doesn't really know what he's going through. He's just doing his kid thing and he's succeeding. But take that same player 30 years later and to have that same accomplishment, and he's going to savor it.
You can savor the entire new Rush album, Snakes and Arrows, by getting a copy where you buy music, available as of May 1st. Plus, the conversation with Rush continues online. For a complete transcription of the interview, simply go to legendsofclassicrock.ca. I'm Jeff Woods. Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to Rush, Snakes and Arrows, the world album premiere. Special thanks to Geddy Lee, Neil Peart, and Alex Lifeson, to Shelley Knott and SRO Management, and to Jeremy Summers, Christina Clark, and Megan Simsick at Universal Music Canada. Program written and produced by Jeff Woods, Andrew Burns, and Anthony Conte. Production assistance by Kella and Kelly Thompson. The executive producer is Bruce Henney.
Hi, this is Alex.
Hello, this is Neil Peart.
And Geddy.
Of Rush.
You've been listening to a Deep Sky production.
K-Rock is Newfoundland's